So today I wanted to film a book talk. I haven't filmed one of these in a while, but I decided that I wanted to film one on the MISTBORN series while they're still fresh in my mind. So instead of waiting until the end of all 3 books and wrapping them up kind of at the same time, I figure I will film it after each segment, like after each book, and I'll put this whole thing together at the end and post it as one kind of long video, because I feel like I'm going to have a lot to say, and I kind of want to talk about the whole series, so you'll kind of see my thoughts as they change or grow or whatever until the end. But I just finished The Final Empire, which is the first book in the series, and I appreciate so hard all the people who got me interested in this. Mostly, I think probably Murphy Napier and Elliot Brooks, like they're the main 2 that have talked this up for me. But the few people that I have seen talk about this particular book, also I think Peruse Project, is that Reagan from Peruse Project? They've done such a great job at keeping all of the wonderfulness that is inside this book without spoiling anything for anybody. So I was really appreciative of that. And so for the non-spoiler part of this video, all I'm going to say is that we meet a character named Vin, who is like an orphaned girl, and then we meet our other character, Kelsier, who runs this thieving crew. And essentially the whole plan of the book is to take down this bad guy who has taken over and ruled over them and oppressed all of these people for years and years and years. And so essentially the goal is to deal with that situation. That is all I want to say about this book, and I hope that wasn't too much. Before we get into the spoilers, I just want to say if you love really great friend groups and sarcastic humor, I loved this book for that. I thought that the humor and the banter between everybody was fun, and I really enjoyed that. I loved every single character in this book. I loved. So I am just super excited that I finally started this. I'm gonna get into the spoilers now because I want to talk about my thoughts on this. If you haven't read MISTBORN, go and read it, and once you've finished them all, then come back and comment below. Getting into the spoiler part of this video, I am so excited about this book. I love Vin's character arc, and Vin and Kelsier, I just love them. I couldn't help it. Like, obviously they're written to love, but sometimes I think with, how do I explain this? Vin, when you first meet her, obviously she's kind of angsty, but she calls herself a street urchin. She has been homeless. Her brother was awful to her. Everybody left her. She was just really lonely. She got beat all the time, and it sucked. And she was used for her powers that she didn't even know that she knew that she had them, right? But didn't know what was there. And I just loved her character arc. I feel like she was still written as a young person. Like, wasn't like she went from a broody teenager and then all of a sudden was like, I am a perfect, improved person. You could see, I loved seeing how through the book, her apprehensions about having friends and relationships with people and trust blossomed and grew like throughout the book. I loved watching how that went. And then when we meet Kelsier at the very beginning, I don't even care, from the very first scene that he started talking, I just loved him. I knew that I was going to love this character. And so going through the book, I'm going to say I love so many times, but just the entire crew, I thought that it was so funny. Like, in my mind, I can picture all of these friends and all of this sarcastic banter, and then when they tease Breeze, or like how Clubs is this like surly guy who's always sitting off in the corner just watching. And even Spook, obviously, I even came to like Spook, even though obviously for most of the book you have no idea what he's saying. I feel like there isn't a lot for me to say, but it's the ending of this book that just, I don't even know what to say. I loved this book a lot. I really enjoyed it. I read it. I think it took me about 10 days to read, but I had to take a couple like breaks in between because like life got busy. I liked how obviously they had the plan from the beginning, and when they kind of made the plan, it kept, obviously wrenches have to be thrown. There has to be wrenches in the plan, or your book would be like this big. But I liked that whenever there was a problem, it didn't seem overly convenient to me. Like, it seemed like a realistic problem and a realistic solving to the problem. or a realistic way to solve the problem. I don't even know why, because I figured Vin wouldn't die. Like, I just had a hard time believing that she would die, especially in the beginning of the book, because I was pretty sure she was, like, one of, like, the main character that goes through. But I did not know that they were going to kill Kelsier. I had no idea. And when he killed Kelsier, I was so mad. I actually, like, I finished that part, and it happened so abruptly. It was, like, what? Like, I had to, like, go back and read it again, and I'm like that? Just like that? What? He was my favorite person in the book. I had no idea it was coming. No one that I have watched has ever spoiled that fact. I had no idea. Zero inclination that he was going to die. I knew someone was going to die. I figured someone would die, but for some reason, I thought he was going to kill off Spook or something. I thought he was going to get killed just because he was, like, a minor character, or, like, I thought maybe one of the other crew members, which I don't know why, but I had a feeling that, like, something bad was going to happen to Breeze or Clubs because they were important and I loved them in the story, but, like, they weren't necessarily the most important. Definitely thought something was going to happen. Nope, it was Kelsier. Couldn't believe it. And then fast forward a few pages, because I literally put the book down for 2 days, and so I had this much left, and I just didn't want to open it back up because I was so salty about this happening. Like, I was so mad that he died. But then I opened it back up and I start reading, and I get to the part where he leaves those notes for Vin, and he talks about how his wife always wished that she had a daughter. And that was when the waterworks started. I didn't cry when he died. I was mad. I was pissed. And then when I read that, I was like, oh my goodness, I was so sad. And now, every time they talk about Kelsier, my heart hurts. I'm, like, sympathetic to them. Or empathetic to them, whichever would be. But I just feel so bad for them, and I know that they're not real, but, like, my heart hurts every time I think about Kelsier. And I just could not believe that they killed him. Like, it was a great move because, like, it made me hurt, and definitely, like, it's going to make the story, you're gonna, like, remember him and, like, with very good feelings and whatnot. But I was so sad that he died. I had no idea that was gonna happen. And then Elend, obviously, he was meant to be liked, and when everybody was like, he's just a bad guy in the beginning, and Vin's like, no, he's not, he's so honest, and I don't know why, but I just fell for that kid. I just loved them together. I thought they were so cute. I loved that they didn't just smush faces right away. Like, I loved that they saved it. And they, for the end, like, she gives him, like, a kiss in that one fight scene or whatever. And then it just ends with them in a big hug. And that warmed my heart. I loved that. And I loved that it took a while to get there. I don't know. I feel like I enjoyed that he came to the realization that she wasn't nobility on his own, and that he got over it on his own. You know how, like, in movies or in books, as soon as they find out, there's, like, a book where they find out someone is secretly a prince and they get mad, and I'm like, what? Like, why are you so upset? Like, I get it. I do get it. But then on the other hand, I'm like, but they're still the same person. They just didn't tell you. I don't know. I guess in real life, I wouldn't like that probably, but I don't know. I loved that he still liked her regardless of what, and, like, when she found out that she was a Scot, and I loved that he wanted to help the people, and I hope he continues to be a good person. I hope. I see him, like, watch him get killed next or something in the next book. He'll die, and then I'll just be like, shh. I'm gonna wrap this little part up now because clearly I have no idea what happens next, but I loved this story. Alright guys, so we are gonna get into book 2 in the MISTBORN trilogy, The Well of Ascension. It's obviously gonna be all spoilers from this point out because there's nothing more to say about the first book, so if you haven't read all of them, pause here and come back after and you can catch up on each section if you want to. But this book made me feel, I felt so betrayed with this book. Like, it was like I had no idea ever who was going to turn bad or who was going to be, I can't even think of the word, but the Khandra, like the bad guy in the book or whatever. Like, I had no idea. And so when the book starts out, Orasur is just like, I don't care about him. He's kind of whiny, and I guess he doesn't really say a lot, but I didn't really care about him. And then after Vin gives him the wolfhound body and they start kind of building this relationship, I thought the banter between the two of them was so funny. Like, I loved it. There was, like, a part where he makes a joke, I think, about eating Breeze and Ham, and then Vin says something like they probably wouldn't taste very good anyway, and then he says, I don't know, Ham's name is Ham, and the other one is always marinating himself, because Breeze is always drinking wine. And when I read that part, like, it made me laugh. It made me chuckle so much. And I feel like the way that they got to know each other through the book, I just loved the relationship between Orser and Vin. I loved it. I was so there for it. I was so into it. And then you find out that Orser is the informant for Ellen's dad and Zane, or whatever. Like, he's the bad guy. And you're like, what the actual F? Because I had no idea. I did not see that coming. Other people may have seen that coming. I don't know. I had no idea, no inkling whatsoever that he was going to be the bad guy. And I was just like, what the heck? I just felt so betrayed because I loved the two of them together and they seemed like they were getting to be like such good friends, and then that happened. But then you go on and Zane, who I was also on the fence about, like Zane, I had no idea, like I kept thinking like, okay, he's a bad guy. No, maybe he's not so bad. Oh, he's pretty shitty. No, I don't know about this. Like I kept flip-flopping back and forth with him because I just didn't know what his deal was. And like he was also pretty unstable, so he kept plotting his dad's murder, but then the dad was never dying, and it was just like all this stuff, and so I couldn't tell if he was like working for the good guys, working for the bad guys, or just nuts. Like I had no idea, and I'm still at a loss for like what he thought he was going to accomplish by everything that happened in the end. And he was such a good character because I had no idea. Like, I could not read him. I had no idea what he was doing. I love the crew in this. I feel like Dachshund didn't really get a lot in the book. Like, I feel like his character was kind of meh. I didn't really feel very attached to him. So when he ended up dying, I was kind of like, well, his character didn't really have a huge play in this book anyway. Breeze and Club's relationship, like their friendship, I think is so funny. Like they're your typical, totally different kinds of people who make really great friends. And I loved Clubs for his surliness. And he's just one of those people, I feel like it's one of those tropes where you get that token grumpy guy, but like you love him anyway, even though he's kind of ornery. You guys feel me? Like I loved Clubs, and when he died, I was just like, what? And then I thought that Breeze was gonna die, and he ended up in pretty rough shape. I actually can't remember like if it mentions him at the very end or not, or if he came out of his catatonic state or whatever. I'm not really sure what. I feel like I should know, but I can't recall if they mention anything at the very end. I loved their dynamic, and then when Clubs died, I'm so sad. I'm gonna miss him. Like, I feel like he really shone in this book, even though he wasn't a massive character. I feel like I'm a huge fan of side characters. I love really great side characters. But then, I kept having an inkling through the book because they always talk about, like, the snap, and that's how someone becomes Mistborn. And so I kept thinking, like, wondering if Elend was going to end up, because he kept saying, like, I'm not Mistborn, I'm not, like, not kept on, but I feel like a few times he mentioned about, like, how he wasn't a Mistborn and how it would be so cool to have, like, powers or whatever, how he wished that he understood Vin and stuff like that. And so I kind of thought maybe it just hasn't happened yet, but then we were nearing the end of the book and it still hadn't happened, and I, like, kind of put that thought out of my mind. And then he ends up getting powers. So I'm kind of excited about that. I hope that doesn't, I don't know. I'm excited to read the third one because I want to know like what goes on with that. I just want to like read the next book and not think too much about it. One thing I have to say is most of these orange tabs are for Straff because he was such a son of a bitch, and the things he said, I think it made me laugh, but I wasn't actually mad, but I was just thinking in my head like, oh, you dick. Because he makes comments about the girl who comes to, like, give him his medicine or whatever when he thinks Zane is poisoning him. And he keeps talking about how she's in her late 20s and she's had kids and, like, now she's fallen apart. And I'm like, I'm in my late 20s and I've had kids. I am offended by you, Mr. Straff. You're a dick. But this first tab here is the only one in the book that has to do with me not liking parts of, like, the best characters. But this little tab here, I feel like for the first portion of the book, Vin and Ellen's relationship was kind of annoying. Not enough to make me drop stars or anything. I still give this book 5 stars. But at the beginning, they just kept saying, like, I don't know why he loves me. I don't know why she loves me. I love him, blah, blah, blah. And there was just a lot of talk of, I love, he loves, why do they love? But there wasn't a lot of, like, showing. And I don't mean, ooh, you have to have really good scenes and all this, like, nitty-gritty nasty stuff. There wasn't a lot of them together. Like, I think the only thing that didn't throw me way off is the fact that this book is a year after the last one. So you kind of just assume in your mind that over the past year, they've had time to build their relationship. That's like the saving grace that I'm giving, the benefit of a doubt that I'm giving to that. I feel like there was a few times in the beginning where they were like, and he gave her a long kiss. I think, because I've heard people say, like, Brandon Sanderson is not the best when it comes to romance, and I feel like that was, like, what I really noticed in the beginning. I feel like throughout the book, it got better, and honestly, I feel like the whole thing between Sazid, I don't know, how do you say that name? Between Sazed and Tindwyl, I feel like their relationship was very seamless. You could tell there was some tension there. It didn't feel like forced to me. I thought they were very well matched, especially given, like, her history and what's happened to him. I feel like they both balanced each other out, and you could tell that they liked each other, and it was, like, a very slow build. And then, of course, they killed her, and it was super sad. But I liked their dynamic. And then throughout the book, I feel like I got on board with Elend and Vin again. Like, I kind of started to be on top of their relationship again, or, like, for it. And then I guess the other thing is the section where Vin decides she doesn't know who to be with. For some reason, like, when I was reading the parts between her and Zayn, I wasn't thinking of it in, like, a romanticized kind of way. I felt like that when that came across, it came across a little bit forced, because she kept talking about how much Ellen loved her and all this stuff, and then all of a sudden there's another dude, and all of a sudden she's thinking about who to be with or whatever. At first I didn't realize they meant, like, romantically. I don't know what I thought, but I wasn't expecting there to be, like, a love triangle, and I felt like that wasn't the best well done or whatever. But again, that stuff it wasn't enough for me to, like, maybe I'd give it 4.5, but, like, I definitely would round it up to 5 stars, for sure. And I feel like those were the only things I noticed that I didn't really love. I loved Sazid's character, and I really loved all of these, and Sazid was one of my favorite characters from the first book as well. I just loved him. The way, like, I picture him in my head, he just seems so regal and kind and soft-spoken, but, like, also really strong. Like, I don't know if that makes sense, but I just loved his character. The ending was wild. I want to know what's going on with Marsh. Why did he turn bad? Is it a thing with the longer you're an Inquisitor, the worse you get, and there's just nothing you can do about it? What happened? Is he gonna die? Because he was the reason that they pretty much succeeded in the first place, and then all of a sudden he's a bad guy. So I'm like, what the heck's going on? So I think that is everything I have to say for the second book. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head, and you guys know me. I don't make notes, so I am always unprepared. But I loved this book so far. I loved the first book, loved the second book. I'm expecting to be gutted by the third, because Sanderson is just not afraid to kill people. I feel like I'm nervous for everyone, because literally anyone could die, and I'm ready. I'm not ready for it, but, like, I'm bracing myself for impact. Alright guys, we are gonna get into book 3. I just finished this last night. I'm so excited. But if you're following along piece by piece with the timestamps, stop here, go read the third book, and then come back, because I'm gonna get right into all the spoilery goodness. The first thing that I wanted to talk about was the ending. That ending was perfect. I mean, it broke my heart into a million pieces. I was literally sobbing, but the ending was perfect. It was, like, exactly what needed to happen, even though it sucked. But, like, if it didn't suck, I don't think it would have felt like anything. So definitely the deaths at the end just, oh, they gutted me. I cried so hard when Ellen died. And then when Vin drops from the sky, and it just, oh man, it broke my heart so bad when she was talking about how she already let him go once, and, like, that made me so sad in the first book, and then he didn't actually die, and I was so excited, but then he died anyway, and then I was so sad again. A couple people mentioned the death in book 3, which really isn't a spoiler, because let's be real, obviously someone is going to die, but when I heard the death, For some reason, I just decided that only one person was going to die. I just assumed, but that wasn't true. Like 3 people died. And I was so sad about it. I mean, but I had decided in my mind that that meant one person was gonna die. And I think up until, I can't even remember what page I was at, multiple hundreds of pages in, and I only had like 120 pages left or something, and I'm like, okay, so the death is going to happen in this last section. And it was like, I wanted to read it, and I went through that whole section in like one really long sitting because I just wanted to finish it. But I had just told myself in my mind, I just decided that it meant only one person was going to die. Not the fact that Elend was going to die, Vin was going to die, Tensoon was going to die. Can't remember if anybody else, but like those were the 3 big ones because Tensoon really did grow on me, and I'm going to get to that in a minute. But there was definitely a couple points in across the 3 books when they were talking about the hero of ages. I definitely had the thought cross my mind, like, Sazid really fits that. Like, he's definitely, like, he kind of fits the bill. But then it was like a passing thought. It wasn't anything I wrote down. It wasn't like anything I had guessed. And honestly, I don't like guessing the ends of things. I really don't. I try not to, like, unless it's like seems really obvious. Sometimes I'll write a note. But I like to fall into the story and just discover it as it's written and be surprised. I don't like to try and necessarily figure things out. But that ending broke my heart. And I think, so for this book, I gave it 5 stars. But the beginning, for me, I was trying to figure out why I didn't like it as much as the rest. I think I've realized it's because I just wanted to know what happened. Like, for me, I feel like this was my least favorite of the first half. Like, the first half was my least favorite of all the 3 books. But I think that's because I knew something so big was coming, and I was, like, so tense trying to get there, but I needed to read through so much to get there. And I think that's the only reason. Because when I think back on it, I loved the story. I absolutely loved everything. It's just, I wanted to get to the end. And obviously, you needed to get through all of that to understand everything and to learn more about Ruin and all this stuff, and you just had to, like, there was so much information you had to absorb in order to get there, and you had to follow so many different people's journeys to get back to the place that they started, and oh my goodness, it was so good. Everything was so well planned out. Everything was so perfect. The only thing, oh, my eyebrow's itchy. The only thing I would say is I felt like the part when Vin was, like, held captive, it did feel a little bit stagnant to me. And that's the only thing I'm going to say. I really don't have anything bad to say, but I feel like that part, I'm just like, I was waiting and I just wanted her to get out so bad, but I think that's because I just wanted her to get free. I wanted her to, like, pull something out of her back pocket, get some tricks out. I wanted her to do something, and I loved how, I can't remember what the Obligator's name is. I don't remember. Anyway, the Obligator King guy, I loved how he ended up letting everyone into the city because Vin did pull that trick out of her pocket. Even though he still believed in the Lord Ruler or whatever, he still came to the realization that he needed to let them in and help them, which I thought was great. But I loved this book so much, and the ending just made me sob. And then the epilogue part when they're like, when Sazid left them, they're reading the tome that he left behind, or the book, and when he said that he tried to bring them back, and he couldn't do it, and I was just like, oh my goodness, I was so sad. And then you find out that Spook is okay, and he actually managed to, like, heal all the burns and everything, and I just thought I thought it was so sweet that he managed to, like, fix everything. I just thought it was so great. And then the characters in this book that really stood out to me, I would have to say Sazid is still a favorite. I've always loved him, but he made me really sad in this book because he was so sad the whole time. He just didn't seem like him. And that kind of broke my heart a little bit, and I was just like, oh, Sazid, cheer up. I just, like, wanted to make him happy because he's always so silver linings guy in the other books, and this one he was just, like, so sad and not himself, and that made me really sad. But I did love how the ending came about and how it all worked out. Breeze I still love, but Breeze is, like, he's one of those characters, he's not super important, but I just picture him as, like, a guy with, like, a deep southern accent or something, living in, like, a big colonial house with his cane, and I can't explain it, but, like, that's the voice that I hear in my head, and I just love him. I think he's great. I guess I assumed that he was probably gonna die, or I think, maybe not that I assumed, but I hoped, because even though I would have probably still cried if Breeze had died, he wasn't the people. I can't explain it. And then at one point I thought Spook was going to be the one to die, because I knew someone was going to die. I knew someone had to die. I just did not realize it was going to be Elend and Vin and sort of Sazid. I mean, he didn't die, but he wasn't on Earth. He became the god, and I just, oh man, my heart, everything hurts. But I did adore Spook. I loved seeing him come into his character, because obviously in the last couple books he was around, but he didn't have a big part to play. He wasn't like, he didn't get to be the hero or anything, and he always thought he was so unimportant. And then in this book he realized how important his job really was and how much he really was appreciated, and I loved that. I also loved the way that Sanderson wrote the Kelsier parts. I did manage to guess. This is one thing I did guess. Pretty early on, like, I can't remember what one of the first things Kelsier said to Spook was, but it was definitely not something that I thought Kelsier would necessarily say. And so I did make a note, like, I was like, is Ruin pretending to be Kelsier? Like, I wrote something like that on the edge of one of the pages with a little sticky, because that was one thing I was kind of like, I want to remember that, because if that's true, then this is one time that I guessed something. And I was right, because it was like before they explained that Ruin could like semi-control people depending on the metal in their body or whatever. And I loved that Spook, even though he had all this power, he was obviously a good person, and he ended up digging out that spike so that Ruin couldn't control him anymore, because he realized. And then obviously with Quellion he realized, and I just thought that was so cool. I loved Spook's whole part in Urtau. I loved that whole part. He was such a hero, and it was so great. And he obviously got to fall in love, which was fun. But I just thought Spook was so great. And then he sacrificed himself to go into the building, and you find out that his crazy overload of tin actually helped him to be able to make it there, because anybody else would have felt the pain and like died on the spot. I just thought it was so good. And then I feel like maybe my most favorite character, it's a toss-up. I don't know. I mean, Sazid is definitely a top favorite, but TenSoon, I wanted him to have even more time than he did. I fell in love with TenSoon's character. I just think he's funny, but he's very like loyal and smart, and not loyal to a fault necessarily. Like, he is loyal up until the point where he knows what he's doing is wrong, and so I guess maybe he's loyal to like his own morals more so than anything. But one thing that did make me really sad was that I kind of for some reason thought that he was going to make it to Phaedrix and save Vin, rather than Vin saving herself. Don't know why I thought that, but I definitely thought he was going to come and help him, and it turns out he didn't even get to see Vin before she died, and that broke my heart. But then also he died too, because he was one of the Khandras that like, they all pulled their spikes out and they all let themselves go so that Ruin couldn't have them. And I was so sad, because I wanted TenSoon to make it through. And I know he did a bad thing in the second book, I understand, but I fell in love with him in that book. And then obviously the betrayal happened, but then he went on to remind Vin that she had power that she could use him for. And then, so I mean, did he really betray her? I mean, he did, but you could tell he felt bad, and he like showed her how to win. So then getting into this book, when I saw that he was back, I was like, yeah, TenSoon is back. And it was very hard to start calling him TenSoon instead of Orser. Whenever I would make notes at the beginning, I was like slashing the names together, because I was like, they're not the same, but they're the same in my mind, because it was so confusing. I loved his character. I loved everything that he did in the book. I thought he was so majestic, and he is just, I will be his friend. He's so cool. I just loved him. Especially, maybe it was because he was a dog, and the fact that he came to like love this body that Vin made him have, that they all thought was so disgusting. I just thought it was so cool. I can't say enough about TenSoon. I was sad though that he didn't actually make it to see Vin. I really wanted them to like be reunited, and that didn't happen. That made me really sad. Don't know if I have anything else to say. The whole series, I guess I'll just wrap up like the whole series in my mind. Like, the series was definitely a 5-star series. It was a fun ride. It was so good. I loved all 3 books. I loved all the characters. I don't even know what else to say. It was just so good. So that is everything I can think of to say. Obviously, I'm sure I am missing a whole bunch. Like, I have lots of tabs here, but there is absolutely no way that in this video I can go through every single one. But I just loved this series. I had such a fun time. I'm so happy it was recommended so many times. Definitely leave comments down below. Start discussions. What are your favorite characters, your least favorite characters? What did you love? What did you hate? I am so excited to be done because now I can finally talk to other people about it, which is so exciting. But I'm gonna say goodbye now because I can't think of anything else to say and I will ramble on forever. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you want to see more videos and click the bell if you want to be notified whenever I upload, and I will talk to you all soon. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!